Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you all for being here today. I wanted to point out that in my district, we're experiencing a real problem with Treasury checks being stolen. And obviously, this is not something that's unique to my district, although it's been heavily impacted. As you've mentioned, the GAO estimates a total of $162 billion in improper payments in fiscal year 2025 and more than $2.8 trillion since 2003. So you have the issue of improper payments, and then you have those of the fraudsters and the folks that are actually physically stealing these checks, washing them, reissuing them, and cashing them. And in my district alone, we've had roughly 400 constituent cases of stolen federal checks that total $5.4 million. So this is a big issue, right? If we multiply that by all the members and the senators in this body, you're talking about a substantial amount of money. And I would love to hear from any of you on what you think could be a viable solution. Obviously, moving people to direct deposit is one thing we're looking at. The president did issue an executive order. We recently passed legislation out of the House to require IRS to reissue payments if the consumer wants or the taxpayer wants via direct deposit. Maybe tracking checks so we know what point these checks are being stolen. And then AI, as you're discussing today, can come in handy as well. So we'd love to hear from any of you on any ideas or solutions you may have or what you've seen work potentially in the private sector as it relates to financial crimes that could be applied here.
Yeah, so I don't have an answer for the direct question of what do you do about washing checks, Congresswoman, but I appreciate the question. You know, within how do you, so we're talking about really fraud, because fraud is where you get into the point of someone's purposely trying to defraud the government, which is what this is about. Analytics certainly and AI could certainly help this by tracking the actual payment beyond just the check, making sure that the individual is actually receiving it, providing some sort of methodology to check back. Those are types of things that the private sector uses that can then be repurposed potentially for the government. It is not an area that we have looked into, though, at GAO.
Okay. Mr. Chilson?
So obviously taking the middleman, taking the middleman out, which is the mailbox, I guess, and doing direct deposit makes a ton of sense. It's not really an AI approach. It is obviously an established technology, but there you're relying on the commercial sector, which does have a lot of capabilities to identify, when electronic payments are working and when they're not. Electronic payments are not fraud-free, but the companies have spent a lot of money to identify how to make sure that money moves properly between accounts. And so I do think that the more you can move people to that type of approach, the better it will be.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Thomas, in your testimony, you highlighted the need to extend the Social Security Administration's authority to share its full death data master file with the Department of Treasury, which is set to expire next year. And I would like to know your thoughts on how much this has recovered, how successful it's been. It's my understanding it's about $31 million in payments. And can you highlight any other multi-agency data sharing that needs to take place?
I would love to, but I want to make sure I give you exact information. So if you don't mind, I'll get back to you on that.
Okay, no problem. And then one more question for you. What is the most significant barrier stopping the federal government from implementing these advanced AI technologies to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse?
Yeah, so I think there's two areas that I want to particularly highlight, and it's this is one of the biggest questions out there. And the first one I think we've already talked about quite a bit, which is just the partitioning of data, trying to make sure that data is available to the anti-fraud community so that we can track people across the different parts of the government and track the information so that it can actually be used for large types of analytic models. The second is actually just as important and probably needs to happen before the first, which is a foundational data that is validated, that shows these are actual indicators of fraud or improper payments. We can't get into a habit of marking something that is not fraud and making a guess at it. We do actually need to go through the entire process with the IGs to make sure that something has actually been validated and put that into kind of a gold standard data set. That is going to produce the best outcome for our analytical tools.
Thank you.